So, hello everyone. This is Gus with the Everything Goes podcast. I hope everyone is enjoying their 4th of July weekend. I know I was until these earthquakes came. I live in Southern California, LA. You guys know what happens out here on the West Coast. We have earthquakes. So, that's what we've been dealing with. And that's what I'm going to be talking about this week. We're going to be talking a little bit about the earthquakes out here. I hope everybody enjoyed their 4th of July. I know I did. I know my kids did. My family did. It was a little bit weird dealing with these earthquakes and these aftershocks because we haven't had one in a while. So I don't know if we tend to forget, but I had forgotten how it feels. I think this is the first time I actually have one that's actually pretty big. We had two. First one was on early morning 4th of July, which was around 10 o'clock in the morning. That was 6.8. And then the July the 5th, around 8:20 at night, we had a 7.1. So those are pretty big earthquakes. For a guy that lives in a 3-story apartment, it shakes and it rattles and rolls and it kind of like freaked out. I don't know about you guys, but if you live in California, you know what I'm talking about. Yes, California out here in LA, we get the sunny side. We get a lot of sun out here. We get the 80-degree weather the majority of the time. We have the scenery, I guess, out here in California, but the one thing we do get is earthquakes, and that's just the part of living out here, I guess. I want to talk a little bit about the earthquakes out here in California. So that's the topic this week, earthquakes. A little brief rundown on earthquakes, because growing up in California, LA area is just a little bit weird. I was freaked as hell. I was scared as hell. I remember it vividly, and I guess now as a parent, as a husband, as a family man, I tend to care more about my family than myself. So, just a little bit of brief of what happened this week. It's a little weird because everybody has their own story. I was here, but with my boys on Thursday morning, 4th of July, and it started. I was in bed. I was still awake. I was awake, but I was kind of like drowsy still, and then I started feeling like shake. It was shaking a little. I didn't think much of it because in apartments sometimes you feel the rattle and rolls of people throwing doors or walking hard, or my neighbors on top just jumping or whatever. They have kids, so I kind of get used to all that stuff, but it didn't stop. So I rolled out of bed, and then it started shaking really hard. And at the time, my kids are in the living room. My 4 and my 8-year-old, one of them is on the couch, and the other one's playing with his toys, like towards the far side of the living room. And I had to kind of tell these guys, hey, get over here. Everything's out of panic. Everything's rattling and rolling, and they've never felt an earthquake before. So they didn't know what to do or what. If you live in an apartment, it's very less likely that you're gonna cover a hole than an apartment building, especially the way it felt on this one. Because I think one of the first instincts most people have, is to run. As a parent, my first instinct was to grab my boys, and I was not gonna get under a table. So we stood on right underneath the doorway. And then I got these guys dressed after it stopped, because there was a little bit of aftershocks afterwards. So I got these guys dressed, and then like 2 minutes later, my wife walks in like nothing ever happened, and she's all like, "What's going on? Why are you guys getting dressed or whatever, getting ready?" And I was like, "You didn't feel the earthquake? You don't hear all the alarms outside, the cops rushing, the fire alarms and stuff, the firefighters going down the street?" She did not feel it. So it tells you everybody has a different experience when it comes to earthquakes. Now, the one that she felt, I work during the midnight hours, so I was taking a nap at around 8 o'clock, right before I get up to go to work, taking a nap, and it started shaking, rattling, and rolling again, and this one was even bigger. This was a bigger earthquake, 7.1. So it happened at 8:19 p.m. on July the 5th. Now, this is at nighttime. Same thing. Lying in bed, I feel it rolling, and I'm like, should I get up? Is it going to be an aftershock, or should I? So I kind of waited, and then a second later, you start feeling it, how hard it was. Again, now it's all 4 of us, and my wife kind of freaked out. My kids were like, God damn, my little one, my 4-year-old is freaked out just hearing earthquakes. So everybody has a different story. Everybody handles it different. I'm here doing this podcast because it's a big thing here in California, here in the United States. Well, on the West Coast, not on the West Coast, the United States, whatever. I know in other parts of the country, it's more what is it? The South, you guys deal with hurricanes. In the Midlands and the Midwest, you guys you have to deal with Tornado Alley, some earthquakes. But here in California, the West Coast, that's what we deal with: earthquakes. San Andreas fault. Obviously, earthquakes are not fun. They're pretty scary. And the worst part, it happens when you least expect them. So you could just be chilling. You could be doing whatever. You could be sleeping, matter of fact. And then things just happen. That's what happened this weekend. And even after, even all that happened, we still went out there. We had a 4th of July. We all rolled out to my parents' house out there in Palmdale, which is a city like maybe an hour away from LA. So we all met up over there. We did the barbecuing. We did the family. We all hanged out. We did the fireworks and all that stuff. It was your ordinary 4th of July weekend, but a strange one at that. A strange one. Even now that I'm recording this, my family is in my room. My kids are in that room because of the aftershocks. If we listen to the news, they're all saying that we're going to still have some more and maybe even harder ones. So my wife has their bags ready. They're all sleeping in my room closest to the door or to the exit of this apartment. And I don't blame them. I'd be there too, but I mean, that's the biggest. So I'm sleeping in the couch right now, and that's okay with me because I'm the man of the house, and my kids come first, and my wife. So that's the way it's got to be. Anyway, now let me tell you guys why I'm kind of freaked out. This is gonna go back all the way to when I was a kid. I was around maybe my son's age, 9 years old, being in elementary. So this is vividly in my mind. This is one of the reasons I'm very tense and rattled when it comes to earthquakes. But as a kid, now I'm more like I react and I just go because my kids come first no matter what. But as a kid, I freaked out. I was one of those kids that let me give you a picture. I was living in, I would say, LA, which is right in the middle of LA. It's not downtown. It's like the outer parts of LA, a city called Echo Park. And if you ever, anybody that's ever lived in LA, it's not there's nice places in LA, but this place was a little bit, it's one of those places that wasn't. Homes in LA are very cramped up. Apartments are very cramped up. So your neighbors are like right next to you. You could see them, you could hear them. You get used to that life. You don't have much space. So everybody knows you. Everybody and anybody knows you. The neighbors, everybody knows you. That's how cramped up is in there. It's not like you're in the valley where you have more space. You feel like there's more room out here. But in LA at that time, and this is what would freak me out the most, going back before I forget, it's the fact that when these earthquakes happen, as a kid, the majority of them happened when I was sleeping at night. It's always happened at, 12 a.m., 4 a.m., 2 a.m., 3 a.m. It always happened when I was freaking sleeping. So imagine being scared and jumping out of bed. No lights, because a lot of times when the earthquake hits, there is no light. The lights go out. Lights go out. That's one of the reasons they tell you to have flashlights. So this is one of the earliest memories of me jumping out of bed, living in a two-bedroom, second story apartment at the time. And like I said, I was living in LA, so these apartments were old. When I'm saying old, they're old. So as a kid, I was staring outside the window. I thought just shaking it would make it come down. So I was just freaked out knowing that any violent movement or whatever, we were going down. That was just the way I thought. It was going to go sideways, it was going to come down no matter what. It was just a matter of time. So when I felt an earthquake, I don't even remember seeing my parents or anybody else or my sisters at the time. It was just, let me get down as fast as I can down the stairs, and that was it. I remember seeing my brother next to me, my older brother. We were running down the stairs, me and him. We're gunning it. At the time, we had two younger sisters, but I don't remember anything of that. So that was all up to my parents. So what I remember in those days, this is, I would say, late 80s, early 90s. These earthquakes, one of the things I remember as a kid too, running at night outside, you would see these transformers popping all over. So imagine this, the city, dark as hell. And because of the way it's moving and shaking, you see these the light poles or the transformers, I think they're called. They're blowing up everywhere. So you see these lights popping and blowing. It looked like 4th of July all over the city because that's how violent power lines were shaking. So all that, that's like, it was in my head, and just going back up to the apartment and trying to go back to sleep. Everybody else would fall asleep, and I'd stay there, eyes wide open, freaking out. I remember I couldn't go to sleep because I was so scared. I remember being scared. That's one of the things I do remember as an adult. I don't get scared very often, but that as a kid, I was just terrified of. I was terrified. I would stay in bed and shake, and I couldn't go back to bed. And I was always just trying to act tough, but I just couldn't. I didn't cry, but I would stay there with my eyes peeled, tired, but I just wouldn't go back to sleep. I also remember this too, late 80s, I would say. Going to elementary. I don't know if you guys remember, or when you would get dropped off at elementary school and you would either eat breakfast and then go play early in the morning before the bell rung to go get in line and start school. So usually I would get there early, eat breakfast, and then go try to play a quick game of something outside. So I remember this vividly, where I was outside and then it shook so violently outside. You'd see the trees, the kids started screaming, and you felt it. That's the one thing about LA. So there's so many people that there is no way you can't feel it or you see the commotion going on. So that happened that day in the early morning. It's not even 8 o'clock and it was shaking violently. They canceled school. They called our parents to come pick us up. My parents are at work. They couldn't come pick me up, so I was at school in the auditorium, or I think at the lunch area, sitting down for a couple hours until my aunt came and picked us up, which was after lunch, which school's almost over. So we were like a handful of us were still at school. Majority of the school was gone by then. But that's how serious out here in LA that we take earthquakes. It's a big deal out here. It's no joke. Now, moving forward, one of the biggest ones was the 94 earthquake out here in Northridge, which is in the San Fernando Valley. And if anybody knows out here the biggest fault, or it's the San Andreas fault, which is not too far away from LA. So that's when they say that when the San Andreas fault moves, good luck with LA, because of the amount of people, the amount of buildings, how big the city is. It's a big thing. It come down and it could cause a lot of stuff, a lot of bad stuff. Well, going back to the 94 earthquake, it's called the 94 Northridge earthquake, which caused out here in the San Fernando Valley. Okay, the 1994 Northridge earthquake was a magnitude of 6.7, struck at 4:31 a.m. out here in the San Fernando Valley, killing more than 60 people and injuring more than 9,000, causing widespread damage. Anybody that ever lived out here in the valley, the San Fernando Valley, remembers that cold January day. It was winter time, so it was cold. It was a lot of damage done. Luckily for me, I was out of town. I was actually traveling with my mom and brother back in another country, so we weren't here. My dad, my two sisters were at home sleeping, and one of the stories my sister tells, at the time she was probably about eight or 9 years old, is that she had to run inside my dad's room and wake him up because he wouldn't wake up. And so when she tells that story, it's like we're laughing. We laugh about it because my dad, I think, would have slept through it. It was that violent. The things my sister says is that our TVs were rolling, beds were shaking, books were like everywhere. It was bad. It's one of the strongest earthquakes that I think the way it rolled. I think it was an up, like it kind of moved up and down. I want to say, shaking side to side. It was more of a up and down shake, so that's what caused it to be really violent. But even coming back 2 days later after that earthquake, the aftershocks are hard. It freaks you out, man. It freaks you out. You're always on your toes. You're always getting freaked out. Just little movements. Sometimes how it shakes really hard. It's like getting pushed out the way. So you're always on your toes. Now, the things I remember the 94 earthquake, I remember people camping out outside their homes. I want to say I remember some looting in some parts, some apartments, because some of these apartments kind of came down on itself, and they were closed. They were condemned, and cars being crushed underneath apartments. Oh, well, going back to the people camping outside, this is what I remember, because this was our house used to have a pretty big backyard, and behind it was a pool, which was connected to the apartment complex behind us, and the whole that part of the pool, it was so packed with people camping outside. It reminds you of homeless people living outside. I'm sorry to say that, but that's how I remembered, because everybody was around that pool. Everybody was around that pool. That's how freaked out it was. How people didn't want to go back to their apartments, because there were aftershocks after aftershock after aftershocks, and these aftershocks were big, man. These were big aftershocks. There's no joke. These aftershocks, some of them are strong as hell. Not as hard as the original earthquake, but still strong enough that it gets you freaked out. You don't want to be at the house. Now, so like I was saying, luckily for me, I was out of the country, but still felt the aftermath. I came home, seeing stuff broken, dealing with neighbors that are, some homes were cracked and they couldn't move back into their homes and stuff like that. So it was pretty big. It was a big deal. We didn't go back to school at the time. I want to say I was in junior high. So we didn't have school for a couple weeks. I remember 2-3 weeks. That's how bad it was. 2-3 weeks. Luckily for me, thank God I was not there, because I think I would have freaked out. Even as a teenager, I think it'd have been over for me. I'd have been done. How many people? I'm sorry. It's earthquakes. If you have never felt one, they're hard. They're scary. Not once do I remember doing what the schools tell you to do. And every earthquake I've ever been in, I'm telling you, I've been on earthquakes I've been through earthquakes, or whatever they tell you to do at work, or whatever they tell you to do at school. I don't think I've ever done it, because if you ever seen it in a state of chaos, what people do is get out the way. They start pushing. They start running towards the exits. First come, first serve. So survival of the fittest. And that's where I'm in there too, because you want to get out. You want to move away from buildings. You want to get away from, specifically apartment buildings. You don't want to be stuck in here. You don't. If this thing comes down, you're getting crushed. So tell me this. How many of the people that live in apartments are actually going to go underneath the table? I guarantee you they're not many. Even this last earthquake on the last couple of days here, I remember hearing. I live really close to the stairway here, so I heard these people going down the stairs. It's just, that's the way it is. It's an instinct. It's something that most people just want to. They want to survive. They don't want to be stuck in the apartment. I guarantee you, most of you would just take off. And if you live in a house, I mean, I want to say, luckily, you just get out as quick as you can outside. Many homeowners just have to step outside one door and they're outside. Where here, I have to go down. Remember, I live in a 3rd-story apartment, so I have to go a couple stories down with my kids. There's gates at the apartment, so you have to make sure that these gates are not locked or whatever. And elevators, you don't want to be using those, so we use the stairway. So even at work, I work for a company that, I'm not going to say the company's name, but has a lot of moving conveyors. And one of the things they tell you is don't ever jump on moving conveyors. Don't ever jump on slides. But I guarantee you this, if it's me or being crushed in there, I'm sliding down a slide and running through a conveyor belt. It doesn't matter, because survival, it's a thing, man. And most people are going to do whatever it takes to survive. And if it's that violent, I'm running, I'm jumping, I'm crawling, wherever. I'm out. And sometimes if it means that you're going to push somebody over because they're moving too slow, that's what you're going to do. It's part of surviving. It's an instinct that we have. It's an adrenaline. And sometimes you don't even think about it. You just do it. As it sucks as it sounds, a lot of the people that get that are like in the way or at whatever, those are the people that they get pushed over, and they want to. It's just that people are just in a rush or whatever, and they're gonna do whatever it takes to get out or to move or to get going. Yeah, those are earthquakes out here. They kind of mess up. I'm telling you, this last weekend was a little bit awkward or a little bit weird, strange, and it wasn't your normal holiday weekend because of these earthquakes. How hard you want to try or to forget. Now, if you were on vacation, you left California or the LA area, lucky you. But if you didn't, well, welcome back, because you're going to feel a lot of the aftershocks. And for some reason, they keep on saying that more aftershocks are on their way, that the big one's on the way. And it sucks because you have to have that in the back of your mind. So you have to be prepared for something that's coming, but you don't know when. So that sucks, right? So how do I tell my 4-year-old that nothing's gonna happen? I try not to talk about it, because my oldest son, my 8-year-old, is always talking about earthquakes. I just want to give you a history of the biggest earthquakes out here in California. 1906 San Francisco earthquake, 7.9. I'm not gonna tell you how many, but it was pretty bad. 1933 Long Beach earthquake, 6.4. Those are big earthquakes. A lot of damage. 1971 San Fernando earthquake, 6.5. Big earthquake. 1989 Loma Prieta earthquake. It's a 6.9. Location Santa Cruz. That's Upper California. 1994 Northridge earthquake, which was a 6.7. It's a 6.7. It's still strong, but the one we had this last Friday, July the 5th, was 7.1. So it tells you the magnitude of some of these earthquakes. Pretty bad. 1812 San Juan Capistrano earthquake, which was a 7.5. The 1868 Hayward earthquake, 6.8, and it was some areas was a 7.0, which was also known as the Great San Francisco earthquake. So it tells you. 1872 Lone Pike earthquake, 7.8. Now these are big earthquakes, man. 7.8 is big. The 1925 Santa Barbara earthquake, 6.8. 1952 Kern County earthquake, 7.5. 1857 Fort Tejon earthquake, 7.9. Now that's big. The intensity was major there. 2003 San Simon earthquake, 6.6. This is, I want to say, upper Northern California, 6.6. 1918 San Jacinto earthquake, pretty bad damage, 6.8. 1918. 1992 Cape Mendocino earthquake, 7.2. Northern part of California again. Northern California. 1980 Eureka, California. Eureka earthquake, 6.6. And then this last 4th of July, which was 2019 Rich Chris earthquake, 6.4. So it tells you guys that these earthquakes are big. They rattle and roll, and they're not going to stop happening. They're not going to stop. They're only going to get bigger. And what sucks, they were talking about the big one. Out here in LA, out here in the West Coast, they're always talking about the big one. Big one happening. Big one's going to be like a 10-point something. It's happening. You guys see the movie San Andreas with The Rock. So it's a big thing out here in the West Coast, man. Out here, that's one of the things that a lot of people that live out here kind of turn a blind eye to, because you don't want to hear that. You don't want to hear that. That shit's going to go down, and to be ready, and you can't live like that. So the only one thing I did this week that was pretty normal, other than looking at the fireworks with my kids, is watching Stranger Things. I think that's the only thing that calmed me down or had me feeling normal. I stayed up last night. I would say I started at midnight, watched 6 episodes of Stranger Things, and I felt normal. I felt good. I stayed up for some reason, just making sure that everything was going to be okay. For some reason, my kids could sleep good. I stayed up all night, 6 hours. I didn't go to sleep till like 5 in the morning or something like that. So I have a guest. Somebody walked in just right now. What's up, Heidi?
Hey, Gus.
So we're going to have to tell some of these stories that you have, or a couple of the stories, or maybe one story that you have because of earthquakes. And everybody has a different experience on earthquakes. So how'd you feel about those earthquakes July 4th and 5th?
Scary because of my kids. It frightened them, and just the simple fact that you have no control of anything is kind of scary.
You know what's funny? Mm-hmm. I told your story, or the story about the earthquakes at the beginning of the podcast, and the funny part is I told them that the first one on the morning of July the 4th, you didn't feel it. You walked into the apartment and you were like, "So guys, what are you guys getting ready for?" And I was like, "What the hell? What are you talking about? You didn't feel it?"
No, I was on my way home. I was driving, so I didn't feel anything.
And this is the other word, the other part. we were just talking right now about earthquakes you remember. She doesn't remember the 94 earthquake.
The
Can
famous Northridge earthquake in here in
Can
California.
you believe that? That's two stories I had to put out there. She doesn't feel them earthquakes. Oh my God. She doesn't remember the biggest earthquakes in Southern California history. The 94 earthquake. We just to, give you guys a little tip, we do live in Northridge, California. And yet she does not. She didn't feel the July the 4th one early morning where my kids, I kind of told her that my kids were freaking out. My youngest was freaking out. We hadn't felt an earthquake in a while.
Yeah. We haven't felt one in a long time.
No, we haven't. And I think that's one of the reasons that I also mentioned on the podcast earlier that my kids have never felt an earthquake before. So that was their first one. And it's pretty big. To see the scare or the fright in my youngest son's face was I think, for me, a reality check. For real.
Mm-hmm.
It was a reality check. So you were here for July the 5th one, which was that Friday night where I was in bed taking a nap.
Yes, I think it was around 8 something, right? PM?
Like 8:20.
Mm-hmm.
What'd you remember about that one?
I was getting ready to work, to log on, so I could start working. I work remotely as an accountant. And next thing you know, I throw my laptop to the side and just grab the kids. And then that's when my 8-year-old came in super fast and just grabbed his little brother, our 4-year-old, and took him to what you told him was safety zone for those circumstances.
Yeah, it's only safety for those people. I just mentioned that we do stand underneath a doorway, but it needs to have a beam on it. So if you stand on the doorway, make sure that's one of the strongest parts of the either your home or your apartment. It needs to have a beam right under. I do remember talking to my oldest son, and I told him, "Hey, first thing you do, if you ever feel one, just grab your little brother and you start running towards mom or dad." So yeah.
Mm-hmm. And then from there, you appeared like all droggy because you woke up because of the earthquake. You were sleeping.
Yeah.
And then within an hour or so, you had to get ready to go to work. And I was like, screw this. I'm packing my shit and I'm going to my mom's house. So I grabbed the essentials and my kids and took off. I spent the night at my mom's house.
Yeah, and that one's the second one was actually bigger than the first one.
Yeah, it was 7 point something.
Yeah, 7.1, 7.2, and I just felt it was shorter, but everybody tells me it was longer than the first one too. So how did it feel?
Scary, because by instinct, I just wanted to grab the kids and start running down the stairs.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I mentioned that because we live in an apartment, you don't want to stick around this bad boy.
We're literally like on the 3rd floor, but technically we're not. We're more like on the
almost the 4th floor because the
5th floor, because we are like in the our parking structure where we park. There's another parking structure underneath it.
Yeah.
So if you count those two, then it's technically we're on the 5th floor.
We're on the 4th floor. The 1st floor is our... Oh, yeah, you're right. So there's two parking structures right underneath the 1st floor. So, yes, we're basically on the... Yeah, you're right. We're basically on the 5th floor.
Yeah, and being that high, when the earthquake is moving... I mean, when the earthquake is going on, it's happening, we feel like we're going from side to side.
So, yeah, it kind of sways back and forth here in the apartment.
I've never been drunk, but I'm assuming that's how it is.
Yeah, it feels like it's rolling almost.
Yeah.
It's rolling, yeah. And I told everybody, I was sleeping. It was dark. I felt it 3 minutes before because there was a smaller one. I felt it shake, and I woke up. And then I was falling back asleep. And 3 minutes later, the bigger one hit, and I rolled out like a ninja. I told everybody I rolled out like a ninja out of the bed. And for those that don't know, I have a bad knee, so I'm like limping over there like a bad ninja. And the door opened, and it was you and the boys.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, you told me a story that you remember growing up in LA,
Mm-hmm.
and people that live in LA.
Yes.
People that live in LA are very aware of earthquakes, and everybody has a different story or has grown up with earthquakes, and you told me this story about, I think you said it was 92 earthquake, and I thought it was pretty funny. I was like, man, I gotta have you on the podcast. You gotta say this story, because I don't want to make it sound like earthquakes are fun, because they're not. They could be really, matter of fact, I know they're bad, but this story I think is pretty funny. So go ahead and say it.
Okay, so backtracking to 1992, I used to live in South Central with my aunt and her kids, which are my cousins. And prior to the earthquake, a couple months ago, I had just gotten into an accident. So what happened is I was hit by a car when I was crossing the street one afternoon after school.
How old were you?
I was 7. I was in 2nd grade.
And you got hit by this car, you said?
Mm-hmm.
So you got run over, or you just hit by a car?
Well, the car hit me, and I just remember falling down, and next thing you know, my cousin Eddie and my mom were like there, you know?
Yeah.
And then I blanked out, and I just remember waking up at Los Angeles Children's Hospital on Sunset.
So you told me that you had a full body cast, right?
Correct. From my chest,
Yeah.
like from my armpits all around, all the way to my broken leg, which was my right leg, my femur broken half, and then my left leg, I was cast up until my knee.
Yeah.
And I only had 2 holes, one to poop and one to pee.
Wow.
This might be a little bit TMI, but just so you guys could get a better, I guess, description.
Picture? Yeah,
better picture of how I was in 1992. So moving forward, the 1992 earthquake hit, and I was living in South Central. My mom...
You living in an apartment or home?
It was my aunt's home. It was a house. A house. So my mom that day had to work. So I stayed, with my Tia, my aunt. And what I remember is there was an earthquake. I was in the living room in a wheelchair. Mind you, I'm unable to walk because I have a cast on.
Yeah. Full
body cast. And next thing you know, everybody, my aunts, my cousins run out, and my grandma.
So the earthquake hit. Do you remember what time it was?
No, I don't remember what time. I know it was daylight, though.
Oh, okay. It was during the day.
Mm-hmm. And then everybody runs out. And then next thing you know, where I was at in the living room, the ceiling falls on my head. And I had like pieces of ceiling everywhere around me. And I just remember... I want to say my grandma, but I can't confirm unless my cousins can later on once they listen to the podcast. Somebody came and grabbed me and took me outside.
So everybody left you there?
Everybody left me behind.
So everybody ran during the earthquake and left you there?
Exactly. Poor me.
You and the full body cast at 10-year-old. Everybody and the adults ran outside and they left 10-year-old Heidi in her wheelchair.
No, not 10. I was around 7 or 8.
Oh, wow.
I was 10 in 94, the 94 Northridge earthquake.
So
we're talking about 1992.
Okay, so you were 2 years younger, so around 8 years old. So,
yeah, 7 or 8. I can't remember.
Yeah.
But.
So, wow. That's the age of my oldest right now. I can't even imagine leaving them in here with in an earthquake and being in a wheelchair.
I know. So I just remember somebody rushing back into the house, grabbing me and taking me outside. And then once everything, passed, they were trying to clean me up because I had pieces of like the ceiling everywhere in my hair and then inside my cast. So they tried taking out pieces with like a wet cloth.
Yeah.
And then it's just a joke in the family, like they remember me and my cast. And
yeah, well, at the time it wasn't a joke, but now you could joke about it.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. I'm like the child left what it's called? Instead of saying no child left behind, I'm the one that was left behind.
Yeah, but see, that's the thing I mentioned earlier, that when usually earthquakes hit, it's usually you don't know when they're gonna happen. It just does.
Yes.
It just does. And unlike a hurricane or I think even maybe a tornado, you could see it coming. Ice storms and just natural disasters and earthquake, you can't really tell. It just happens. You could be doing it, catches you off guard, and everybody runs, everybody panics. And like I said earlier too, not everybody duck cover holds. Have you ever done that in real life?
Mm-mm.
You've never duck cover hold.
No. I remember in school they would train us, but I've never did it.
Right? It's
Like in real time, I guess.
It's
in a real circumstance.
I mean, I get it. Why they tell you that? I guess in school it'll work because you wanna protect the kids, but in real life it's survival of the fittest. So, I'm pushing anybody and everybody out the way.
With your ninja moves.
So yeah, my cat like reflexes. Now, if it was Dupree probably will fall down and roll down.
Oh gosh.
Yeah, Dupree, I don't know. I could see him freaking out. I could really see him freaking out. But enough about Dupree. Yeah, it's just a little lighter part of the podcast now that you walked in. I just thought that story that you mentioned was pretty funny.
Yeah, I'll share with you a picture. I have a picture of myself.
I've seen the picture of you.
Okay.
You've shown the full body cast to me when you were like 7 or 8 years old. But that specific story where everybody ran and left you behind, it had to be told.
Yes, it's funny.
And then last question. You don't remember 94 earthquake?
I don't. I just remember my mom picking me up over the weekend because I had that weekend. It was my dad's turn to visitation rights.
Yeah.
So my mom picked me up on Sunday, and then we came from Glendale, and then coming back to Northridge, and then I was just so surprised how the house looked. Like the backyard was like cut in half. Like the floor was like torn.
So the ground like had opened up.
The ground, yes.
The ground had opened up. The streets were opened up. Yeah, cracks all over.
Oh, everywhere. And then the kitchen, I remember it was also all messed up.
But you were living in...
I was living in Northridge.
And yet you didn't... Well, you didn't even feel that. You said you didn't even feel the aftershocks. Because I remember the aftershocks. They kept on going for about a couple weeks. They're pretty strong. So every time an aftershock would come, and I was like, "Oh, please, not again." Because I told everybody in the podcast that as a kid I freaked out. I was one of those kids that I would just crumble, kind of like Dupree. Like he crumbles. I crumbled when I was a kid. Yeah. Yeah,
that's all I remember. And then in school, like they were drilling us with earthquake safety and this and that. But other than that, I don't.
Did it ever happen at school? When you were at school? Do you remember that?
Mm-mm.
It happened to me a couple times, and they usually would close the school and they would stop classes and they would have the kids, their parents come and pick them up. But like I said earlier, my parents were working, so they've never picked me up. I was like one of 10 people there still at school. Even the teachers were like, "Man, where are your parents at?" So yeah, it's funny. I'm telling you, I told everybody that's listening that everybody has a different story on earthquakes. And to me, the stories that I can't believe you can't even remember the 94 earthquake. It's mind-boggling. I can't. I don't
remember feeling the earthquake. I just remember the aftermath, like the pictures that my aunt took because she had to provide it to the insurance for the house to get fixed. And just at school, we were being trained like every single day what to do in case of an earthquake.
Yeah. So now that you're a mom and you have kids, are you prepared?
I think I will never be prepared, but I try to the best that I can.
I mentioned to the audience that I've been sleeping on the couch because I want all you guys in the room, just in case, because they mentioned in the news that there's going to be more.
Mm-hmm.
So how's that make you feel?
Safer, because at least the kids are with me, all in one bed.
Because our rooms are my room, our room, and the kids' room is not like really. It's not across the hall. You have to like run across the living room. Mm-hmm. It's 2 bathrooms that separate our our rooms, so we have a ways to run if something were to happen.
Mm-hmm.
So it's not like our rooms are back to back or across the hall. I think that's one of the reasons I have my kids sleeping in my bed, since the biggest bed in the house. So
Mm-hmm.
so are we ready for the big one? What do you think? Is LA ready for the big one?
I don't know. I don't think so. I don't think you could prepare yourself to the best that
Yeah.
you can, but I don't think you're ever ready.
Yeah, we're never gonna be ready.
I think that's just part of life. I mean, on Friday, I just packed the essentials, important documents, passports, my kids' medicines, inhaler, multivitamin, water, extra clothing, but nothing else. No, I don't think we're ever going to be prepared.
And the reason I asked if we're gonna be prepared, because everybody that you hear those experts on earthquakes, they always say that the big one's coming, and when they say big, it's gonna be like a 10 point something, and that's pretty scary, because if the Northridge earthquake was a 6.4 or something like that, and it make that much damage in the LA area, can you imagine a 10 point something in the LA area? This city is busy with a lot of people. A lot of people. Can you imagine?
No, I don't want to. The first thing that comes to my mind is that movie from The Rock.
Yeah, the San Andreas, because we're on the San Andreas fault. LA is not that far off.
Mm-hmm.
The reason they made that movie San Andreas in San Francisco, because it runs through San Francisco. The San Andreas is right underneath it.
Mm-hmm.
The San Andreas fault. So that's why San Francisco gets a lot of earthquakes. I don't know if you guys remember. You're probably too young. In '89, they had that earthquake during the World Series, but it shook a lot of the foundation out there in Oakland, San Francisco area. And I don't know if you guys remember, but in '89 it's pretty big. Bridges fell. The Oakland Bridge fell. Out here in the Northridge earthquake, remember? Do you remember this? We were looking at the 5 freeway, or the 14th, the 5.
Oh,
to the
yes. I remember. Is that the one where the cop died?
A couple of cops died. They drove off the freeway or something like that, because it broke the connection from the 5 to the 14. I think that area right there broke off on the Northridge earthquake.
It was the 5 to the 14?
Yeah.
This whole time I was thinking it was the 118 and the 5.
No, it can't be the 118 to the 5. It was the one that connects the 14.
Or what is it?
To the 5.
170 and the 118.
No, it was that one.
Oh.
We were talking about it on Saturday.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, that area is if you look at it when we drive through it, it's brand new. Well, it looks newer than the other ones.
Mm-hmm.
It's in that other freeway. So yeah, it's gonna be big. It's gonna cause a lot of damage if the big one hits here in Southern California. But I guess that's it. Well, thank you, Heidi, for coming on.
Thank you. Thank you for inviting me again.
Thank you for sharing your story, and I thought it was pretty funny that they left you behind. Eh?
Yeah.
I wouldn't have done that.
Well, you just said you would. Everybody would get out of my way because.
Nah, but I wouldn't leave my kids behind. I told the story earlier too that
you would leave me behind probably.
No, as a kid, we were the first ones running down. My brother and I don't even remember my dad or mom right behind us. They were picking up my kid sisters at the time. They were like, because a lot of the earthquakes that happened that I remember happened that night.
Mm-hmm.
So we would run down the apartment. We were the first ones down. Me and my brother, we were racing down the stairs, and everybody on their own, man.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So those are stories that everybody has different stories about earthquakes and stuff. So thank you for coming on, Heidi. Thank you for walking in and sharing some of your stories.
Yeah, you're welcome anytime.
All right, cool. Thanks.
Bye.
So final thoughts on sunny California. If you live out here in the Southern California area or the West Coast, always be prepared. Always be ready. It says never to freak out, but it all depends on where you're at and what you're doing. So you're going to do whatever it takes to survive. It says to stay calm, and that's it. Knowing that we live out here in the West Coast, and that's what we deal with, earthquakes, you should have all these things ready. You should have your extra clothes, an emergency kit, and yeah, that's it. Stay safe. This is Gus with the Everything Goes podcast. I know that this episode's a little bit different than what I usually do. Usually we talk about specific topics, but as of today, this was it. Earthquakes. I know earthquakes are scary, and they are. I'm sorry, they are, man. They're scary as hell. But can't live in fear, right? Can't live in fear. So this is Gus with the Everything Goes podcast. You could always catch me on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Stitcher, Spotify, YouTube, and on Instagram on the Everything Goes podcast. If you like, give us a like on Apple Podcasts. Leave a comment, say what's up, and tell us if you felt the earthquake, because out here we felt it. They're pretty scary. And I'll see you guys next week.